I'll be honest with you, pepper seedlings look the exact same that they did 2 weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. They're not just sitting there, they're not actually dying, but they certainly are not growing. And you're starting to think to yourself, maybe you just don't have a green thumb. Before tossing those plants out into the compost bin, you need to hear this. It's probably not your fault. There's two huge but sneaky growth stoppers that are sabotaging your pepper harvest before it even gets going. It's an incredibly common frustration. You do everything right, you start your seeds, you pot them up, you give them the perfect spot in the garden, and they just, well, stop. They're frozen in time. But this isn't a mystery. It's almost always caused by two very specific and very fixable problems. In this video, I'm going to be exposing those two main culprits that's holding your plants hostage. I'm not going to overwhelm you with a dozen other possibilities. Just these two causes are the vast majority of the issues. And I'll show you how to spot them and the simple fixes that will turn those stubborn seedlings into thriving pepper producing machines. So the number one reason your pepper plants have stopped growing is without a doubt the temperature, specifically the cold. Now this might sound a little bit too simple, but its effect is massive and easy to underestimate. You might be thinking, but it's spring and it's really warm. Well, you're not wrong, but the peppers, they just don't care about sunny afternoons. They are incredibly sensitive to the cold, especially cold soil and most critically cold nights. Here's why it is such a big deal. Peppers evolved in the tropical and subtropical climates. Picture where they come from: warm soil, warm days, and just as important, warm nights. Their entire system is wired for heat. When the temperature drops below a certain point, the plant's metabolism basically grinds to a halt. It's not sick, it's just in survival mode. The plant goes into a kind of like a suspended animation, saving its energy until things warm up again. So, what's the magic number? For most peppers, growth slows to a crawl once the temperatures drop below 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius. Sure, they'll survive those 40s and 50s, but they will not thrive. They'll just sit there and look the exact same as they did last week. The sweet spot for growth is between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 to 21 degrees Celsius. But here's the key that most people miss. Nighttime temperatures need to consistently stay above 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius for active growth. If your nights are still in the 50s, your plants are spending half of the time just trying to stay warm instead of actually growing. An even sneakier problem is cold soil. You can have a beautiful 75-degree day, but if you planted your peppers out way too early, the ground itself has not had time to soak up that heat and hold that heat. Cold soil, say below 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, directly shuts down root development. The roots are the engine of the plant. If they're cold and inactive, the rest of the plant can't get the water and nutrients that it needs to grow. This is exactly why you can put a healthy looking plant into the ground and watch it do nothing for weeks. The roots are simply too cold to work. So how do you fix this? Well, it's a mix of patience and a few clever tricks. First and most importantly is timing. Don't rush to plant your peppers. I know it's very tempting during the first warm spell because I've done it myself, but it's a classic mistake that just leads to weeks of frustration. Wait until well after your last frost date. I would say maybe watch that 10-day forecast. You want to see a solid stretch of nights somewhere where the lows stay above 55 degrees or ideally 60 degrees Fahrenheit. For most of us, that's like 2 or 3 weeks after our last technical frost date. A little patience now will lead to an explosive growth later on. Second, you can actually warm up the soil yourself. One of the cheapest and most effective ways is to use black plastic mulch. Just lay it over your garden bed for a week or two before you actually plant it. The soil is actually going to absorb that sunlight and trap that heat inside that soil. Third, protect your plants from cold nights. If an unexpected cold snap is coming, cover them. You can use a frost blanket, an old bed sheet, or even turn an old bucket over the top of it if your peppers are small enough. This simple little step traps the heat that's radiating from the ground and shields the plant from that chilly air. And finally, think about using containers. Growing peppers in dark colored pots gives you a real advantage. The pot actually heats up way faster in the sun. Plus, if the cold spell hits, you can just move the pots into a sheltered spot, like up against a sunny wall or even in the garage for the night. All right, so you've ruled out the cold, but your plants are still stuck in neutral. The next place to look is in their diet, specifically the nitrogen imbalance. Nitrogen is a single most important nutrient for leafy green growth. It's the main ingredient for chlorophyll, the stuff that actually makes the plants green, and that drives photosynthesis. Without enough nitrogen, a plant can't build a leafy structure that it needs to grow and make energy. But with nitrogen, there is a catch. It's not just about having enough, it's about having the right amount at the right time. This is where the imbalance can actually trip you up. And it can go one of two ways: too little nitrogen or way too much. First, let's talk about the most common for stunted plants, and that's nitrogen deficiency. The classic sign for nitrogen deficiency is yellowing leaves, especially on the lower, older parts of the plants. The plant is essentially stealing the mobile nitrogen from its old leaves and sending it to the top of the new growth to stay alive. The whole plant will look pale, weak, and sad. This often happens in tired soil or soil that is low in organic matter, like potting mixes without any nutrient. Now on the other side of the coin, too much nitrogen. This sounds weird, right? If nitrogen fuels growth, how can too much be a bad thing? This is what I like to call the nitrogen trap. An abundance of nitrogen tells the plant to do one thing and one thing only: grow leaves. You end up with a gigantic, lush, deep green pepper plant that looks amazing, but gives you few, if any, flowers or peppers. The plant is so busy with leaf growth that it forgets about its real job, and that is making fruit. This happens all the time when gardeners actually get a little too happy with that high nitrogen fertilizer. The plant is all show and no go. So how do we find that perfect nitrogen sweet spot? It's all about strategic feeding. For seedlings and young transplants, their main job is to grow leaves and grow roots. This is when they need a steady supply of nitrogen. A balanced, water-soluble fertilizer like fish emulsion is perfect for this. Giving them a diluted dose every week or two for the first month after transplanting gives them the boost that they really need to power through that sluggish phase. Then you need to know when to hit the brakes. Once your pepper plants are a decent size and you see the first little flower buds, it's time to switch things up. This is when you need to pull back on that nitrogen and switch to a fertilizer that's actually higher in phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus is for the flowering and fruit, and potassium is for the overall health of the plant. Look for a bloom or fruiting formula on the package. If you keep pushing nitrogen at this stage, you're going to end up with that big, beautiful, fruitless bush plant that I talked about earlier. Think of it this way. Early on, use nitrogen to build the factory. Later on, use phosphorus and potassium to actually run that production line. If you really want to eliminate guesswork, a simple soil test is the ultimate cheat sheet. While cold and nitrogen are the two big factors, a few other things can also get in the way. So it's worth doing a real quick check. One is overwatering. It's probably the most common mistake in gardening overall. When the soil is soggy, the roots cannot get enough oxygen and they'll literally start to drown and rot. Ironically, this makes the plant wilt and look thirsty, which actually tricks us into watering it even more. So before you water, remember, stick your finger in the soil about an inch or two, and if it feels damp, wait another day, especially with peppers. Another quick issue is being root bound. If a seedling is in a starter pot for too long, its roots start to circle the bottom, becoming a tangled mess. When you finally put it and plant it in, the roots have a hard time actually spreading out into the new soil, which seriously limits the plant's growth. When you transplant, always gently rough up the root ball at the bottom to encourage those roots to actually branch out. And finally, check the sunlight. Peppers are sun worshipers. They need at least 6 to 8 hours of direct, unfiltered sun every single day. Make sure they're in the sunniest spot you have in the garden. So before you give up on those stubborn peppers, take a moment and play detective. These clues are almost always there. Is it still getting cold at night? Your plants are probably just waiting for summer to really show up this time. Are the leaves looking a little pale and yellow? It's likely that they're hungry for some nitrogen. And remember, sometimes a plant is just focusing on building a strong root system underground where you really can't see anything going on. In that case, all you need to do is have a little bit of patience. You'll be amazed at how quickly a stunted plant can turn around and reward you with a huge harvest. What are the biggest challenges that you've faced when growing your pepper plants? Share the stories that you have and questions down in the comments below. And let's all actually learn from each other. So if you enjoyed this and want to learn more, be sure to check out the other videos I have on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know right away when I put a new video out. Thank you for watching, and like always, keep it growing.